Welcome to this edition of Transformation Thursday. So excited to be here, and so excited that you have thought it good to share this space with us. So we are eternally grateful to you and grateful to God for allowing us this platform. So we welcome you. We welcome you again to this edition of Transformation Thursday. I welcome Dr. Chappelle as always. So we're certainly grateful. Recently, I was asked this question. The question was, how do you become a better leader? How do you become a better leader? And it's just not about being a leader in your work environment, but in all spaces. How do you become a better leader? And I gave it some thought, and my response was, you be a better person. To become a better leader, you need to be a better person. Because in becoming a better leader, you must learn how to first lead yourself. Because regardless of how gifted you are, how knowledgeable you are, regardless of how much you have and who you know, it means nothing without this one thing. And what is that one thing? That one thing is love. Regardless of how gifted you are, knowledgeable you are, experienced you are, in leading, none of those things mean anything without love. And love has to be intentional. Why? Because it's not all that natural for us at times. It's not all that natural for us. If you go to Paul's writing in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, his so-called love letter, Paul says, in essence, he gives us a kind of this description of love and what love really is. And it's not natural because Paul said that love suffers. He says love is kind and love does not envy. Love is not arrogant. Love is considerate. It's hopeful. It never fails. He said love does not rejoice in wrong, does not think evil, is not easily provoked. That's what he says about love. Abraham Lincoln said, he quoted, "I don't like that person." And the next part of his quote says, "I have to get to know them better." I don't like that person, and I have to get to know them better. In other words, he was literally saying that natural thing in us, that so-called sin nature, is something about that thing in us that struggles with certain things. And so he said, I have to get to know them better so that I can weed out all those things. And how do we do that? How do we do that? We grow into it. And so nestled in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, Paul says something to us powerful. He says, when I was a child, I thought as a child, I understood as a child. In essence, I behaved as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. What he was really trying to help us to understand is that love requires us to grow into it, because our natural inclinations often is around selfishness, it's around ourselves. And so we have to grow, remove that childish nature, that nature that focuses on us and moves into love. And so I want to ask Christopher to highlight how to put this into play, to put this into action.
Well, first, I believe that we have to be able to have an understanding perspective, right? So, because not every situation that you will face will be easy, but when we put it in perspective and have an understanding, when we remove ourselves or sit in the other seat, then we are able to see it a little differently. So what that looks like is understanding how I'm led and I'm loved. That's the way that I approach it.
Yeah.
When I understand that sometimes that I have a bad day and it may be unbecoming of me to act a certain way or say a certain thing or in a certain tone or whatever it may be that may not be very appealing to someone else. Simply put, that I'm just being human that day and may not be the best version of myself on that day. So when I look at it from that perspective, then I understand that we never know what someone else is going through, the pressures of life, and perhaps they don't have an outlet for expression or don't know how to express, release, or let go. Then, that becomes challenging and it only exacerbates the problem. But when we lead in love, it's really rooted in the word we call service. He said, the greatest among you will be your servant. So when we're faced with opportunities, the question becomes, how can I serve you? Right. So it totally forces us to remove ourselves again and say, let me think about you and not how you may have made me feel in that moment. So if I can redirect the energy and focus on someone else, then that changes. I'm not saying that it will even be accepted, but when you know that love is in you and that you are loved, then you know that it was given freely.
Yeah.
You have to give it freely.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I was talking to a colleague a little bit earlier from a different institution. We were talking about some of the challenges and things of that nature. And they were talking about how, in essence, they are pretty much no nonsense. They are strictly business. And in essence, they have somewhat of a short fuse, if you will. And as I thought about that, I thought about certainly we're in environments where work has to get done. We're held accountable and so on and so forth. But I thought about one of the things that I'm often talking to my staff and admins about is the need for grace. The need for grace. And when we think about the grace that God has given us, that grace, that given us what we don't deserve. Because as you stated, sometimes there's some bad days. Sometimes you have so much, or people, those who you're working with, have so much that they are struggling with, things you may never know, but they're challenged with. And do we condone those types of behavior? Absolutely not. But there's always this need for a little bit of grace. And when we think about the things we do that often disappoint God, and yet there's this amazing grace that he continues to show us, where he continues to give us those things that we don't deserve, while holding back those things that we do deserve. His grace, and also his patience with us. And so sometimes it's necessary to show a little bit of grace and to be a little bit patient with other people, because we don't know what struggles people are dealing with. We don't know what person just got diagnosed with something. We don't know what spouse just ran out, or whose child is having trouble. We don't know those things. And since we don't know those things, then we have to learn how to be just a little bit patient and to have a little bit more grace. I think that's critical. And all of that goes back to loving one another.
You know, as you were talking, one of the things that I think about that many great leaders have the ability to do in such circumstances is refocus and reshape the energy.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, in terms of performance, that could be like, hey, I still have to be firm and hold you accountable, but while holding you accountable, let me build you up.
Absolutely.
Right.
That's it.
And if we look at how Jesus handled things, right, it was always a model. Although you may get rebuked, but at the same time, you're gonna get built.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah.
So I think it's important to have compassion, have some understanding. I think it's also important as a leader to be truthful and be very direct, but to lead in love, to say, hey, you know what, we'll move forward. It may not be a win in the moment, but let's reshape and refocus the energy, and not focus on the bad day, not focus on the failure, not focus on the setback. Those things are going to happen. But let's move towards a reimagined future, because love is going, like, when we really operate in love, it's going to cover all those other things. When we really operate in truth, then, hey, it changes the dynamics. Right. Going back to the point, if I'm loved and I know that he loves me, and I know that I can't have a bad day for long. I know I can't stay in I have to have hope in the love that I have from him.
Right.
So if I can use that to reshift my energy, if I can use that to help reshape somebody else's, then I think we get further faster.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. I think each of us, someone said this, I can't remember who I grabbed this from, but they said each and every day we have an opportunity to add value to someone. And they said that could be as simple as a hello, a smile that demonstrates the love of God that showcases those, but also recognizing how we can pour into people. I was listening to a seminar today. It was quite an interesting seminar, and it was talking about connection. It was talking about the need for connection. All of us have this thing in us that where we desire intimacy, we desire connection, we desire a place where we can be, or a space where we can be vulnerable, where we can let the guard down. And I'm not saying that that's a workplace conversation, but we all need to feel safe enough to be free and I think that's important. I think that's critical. The Bible says that as you stated before, love covers a multitude of sins. It covers a multitude. And it also says there's no fear. There's no fear in love. There's no fear in love. And where there is fear, then there's absence of love. I think it's a powerful statement right there. It's a powerful verse. There's no fear in love, because there's a freedom to exercise your God-given gifts. There's a freedom in being able to move into what God has for you. There's a freedom in that. And as a leader, because all of us are leaders in our own right, as a leader, I believe there's a responsibility to cultivate that freedom by creating space of love.
You know, I totally agree. I totally agree. Cultivating that space for freedom and based on love is many times counterintuitive to the norm.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And as we develop these spaces and create these spaces, there will be some who really do not know how to operate in that freedom. So we have to be patient with those who may not understand that it's okay to have somebody that care enough about the whole individual instead of just a particular assignment. So I wholeheartedly agree. It just bring back specific moments leading when, you know, it's like an animal that's been chained for a long time, and then the chain break or the rope break, and then it's like what to do with this. So
right.
Sometimes in love you have to continue to show people how to operate in freedom, because it's not normal for a lot of folks, unfortunately. But that's the beauty of it, because when and if they get to that space where they can understand that love is the most powerful thing that you can ever experience. And I mean, man, it's totally transformational. Totally transformational.
Absolutely. Paul said at the closing of his Absolutely. Paul said at the closing of that chapter, the three, he says, faith, hope, and love. But greater than faith, greater than hope, it's love. It's transformative. It's love that really transforms not only our lives, but it transforms the lives around you. And so on this Transformation Thursday, I want you to affirm with us, I will be a better person. And more importantly, I will grow in love. And I will create an environment of love. That's our thought. See you next week on Transformation Thursday.